On the night of November 8, 1939, a bomb exploded inside a Munich beer hall in the exact spot where Adolf Hitler had been standing minutes earlier. He'd left the building 12 minutes before detonation. A single change in his schedule was the entire difference between history as we know it and a version of the 20th century that never happened. The man behind the bomb wasn't part of any military plot or foreign intelligence operation. His name was Georg Elser, a carpenter with no political power, no army, no resources beyond his own hands, and an extraordinary amount of patience. Elser opposed the Nazi regime on his own, quietly, without belonging to any organized resistance movement. He'd concluded, entirely on his own judgment, that Hitler needed to be stopped, and that nobody else was going to do it in time. Working almost completely alone, Elser spent over 30 consecutive nights breaking into the Burger Braukeller, the exact beer hall where Hitler delivered an annual speech commemorating the 1923 beer hall putsch. Night after night, he hollowed out a hidden cavity inside a supporting pillar, directly behind the podium where Hitler would stand. He built the bomb's timer mechanism entirely by hand, using skills from years spent in clock and instrument-making workshops. No blueprints existed for what he was attempting. He essentially had to invent a reliable, silent, long-delay detonator from scratch. Elser calculated the timing with remarkable precision, setting the device to detonate during the middle of Hitler's speech, when the room would be packed and Hitler would almost certainly still be standing at the podium. For years, Hitler's speeches at this specific event had reliably run long, often stretching past 2 hours. Elser built his entire plan around that established pattern. On the night itself, weather over Germany turned unexpectedly poor, grounding Hitler's usual flight back to Berlin. To make his scheduled train instead, Hitler cut his speech dramatically short, finishing far earlier than any previous year, and left the building at 9:07 p.m. The bomb detonated at 9:20 p.m. 8 people were killed in the explosion. Hitler, the person the entire operation had been built around, had already left the building 13 minutes earlier, saved not by any security measure or intelligence tip, but by an unrelated change in the weather over Munich that night. Elser was captured near the Swiss border hours later, caught by German border guards for an unrelated smuggling suspicion, before anyone connected him to the explosion at all. Once evidence tied him to the bombing, he confessed in full detail, walking investigators through the entire operation. Nazi officials initially refused to believe one man working alone could have pulled off something this sophisticated, and spent considerable effort trying to link Elser to British or foreign intelligence agencies. No such connection ever existed. He'd built the entire plot himself over months without help from anyone. Elser was held in concentration camps for over 5 years afterward and executed just weeks before the war in Europe finally ended. Historians studying this night point to just how narrow the actual margin really was. Weather patterns over Bavaria that one specific evening, an unplanned schedule change made purely for travel logistics, and roughly 13 minutes of timing stood between one carpenter's solitary plan succeeding and the war continuing on toward its full, catastrophic length. Consider the scale of what those 13 minutes potentially altered. Millions of additional deaths across the remaining nearly 6 years of war, the Holocaust's final, most devastating years. An entire continent's post-war political map, shaped instead by whatever followed a regime's collapse in 1939 rather than 1945. Elser worked entirely alone, with no institutional backing, no allies, no guarantee anyone would even believe what he'd built. He came closer to changing the century's entire trajectory than any organized resistance movement that followed him. Sometimes, the plans that almost reshape history aren't the ones with armies or governments behind them. Sometimes they're built quietly, by one person, in a hollow carved into a pillar, undone in the end by nothing more dramatic than the weather.